Pierluisi.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to try to lay out a couple of facts that I believe are beyond dispute, or at the very least are supported by the vast majority of my constituents. The first one is that Puerto Rico is facing a very serious, unprecedented liquidity crisis. There are payments in the immediate horizon that, for all intents and purposes, unless the government of Puerto Rico obtains access, adequate access to the markets, the government is going to fail in making. You're going to have massive defaults starting possibly in May of this year, in all likelihood in July of this year. And that's no good for anybody. It's not good for creditors. It is not good for the people of Puerto Rico. It is not good for Congress. It is not good for the municipal markets, and I can go on. So we need to deal with that. Another fact, the budgeting system of the government of Puerto Rico, the accounting system, the financial reporting system, leaves a lot to be desired. Needs to be reformed, and drastically. Everybody agrees. Third, uncontested fact, the amount of public debt in Puerto Rico equals Puerto Rico's GNP. By any measure, that's a lot of debt. And Puerto Rico hasn't been growing significantly since 8 or 9 years ago. So that's the scenario. With that scenario in mind, I tell you, Mayor Williams, I believe that the majority of people of Puerto Rico support a concept of a federal oversight board assisting Puerto Rico in fixing what I just mentioned, putting our fiscal house in order, within reason. But the board itself is not going to be a solution. You also need to provide Puerto Rico with either better treatment in federal programs or otherwise access to the financial markets so that we do not fail to comply with our obligations in the markets. And that's the challenge that we should address here, and I hope that you can comment on. Lastly, and let me just be specific about a couple of examples. DC, the way that the Medicaid programs works in the states, the federal government provides a substantial amount of the funding. In the case of DC, the federal government was giving you 50%, Mayor Williams, you know that. And then as a result of the Revitalization Act, which was part of the legislative package, the Congress increased it to 70%, and it assisted DC. Professor Johnson mentions the EITC program, Earned Income Tax Credit Program, which is the best anti-poverty program in the States. In Puerto Rico, we have extremely low labor participation rate. We need to create jobs, get the people to work in the formal economy. That would be a great tool. So I'll leave it at that. I would like both of you to comment on specific measures, apart from instituting a board, that could assist Puerto Rico in getting into a path towards recovery.
I think they could. I think the entity the entity in Washington D.C. was able to do something very important, and that I think was to begin establishing an environment of success, a climate for investment. Very importantly for citizens and investors, I think when these issues of out-migration, it created an environment for investment where people wanted to invest again where they wanted to live. How was that done? Create reliable financial information. Create reliable government financial operations. Before you ask for anything, make sure you're collecting, before you, not only collecting your revenue, cashing your checks. We had checks and bundles on a floor in a room. We weren't even cashing checks. So cash your checks, collect your revenue, manage your government operations, create settled expectations. Begin bringing down the size of government. Not that the size of government alone is a solution, but how can you create confidence unless you're addressing fundamental government operations? Building on that, And on that basis, then you're looking at your balance sheet and you're saying, okay, on the basis of all this, we're collecting the revenue we can, we've reduced government operations, you know what? We still need to look at our relationship with the federal government. I think that ought to be the approach here. Look